If you have any questions, then please put them in the chat and start with a Q so we know it's a question rather than a comment. Okay. So on that, good to see everyone. Please feel free to put any comments you want in the chat. That's what it's there for. And I would like to now introduce Sean Clayton, who's going to do the HSE review. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, somebody had to start talking on mute, didn't they? Or it wouldn't be a normal meeting. So thanks, Keith. I'm now here. And good afternoon, everybody. Just to share, if I seem slightly disorganized this afternoon, my BT decided that the internet was not to work where I live today, and it went back online about half an hour ago. So there's been lots of frantic emails and phone calls this morning about how can I possibly do this without an internet connection. So it's great fun, but here we are, and I'm very pleased that it came on in time so that I could join you this afternoon, because obviously it's been 2 years now since we were last together in Bridgend with the Alliance for the update review. And of course, the world has completely changed and since then. But without further ado, I will move on with my presentation. As they say in UK government, next slide, please. So today I'm going to give you an update, as we always do, about HSE and who's who, a reminder about what our mission is, and then to talk about the reality, the statistics, and where we are in the world of health and safety. Then I'm going to talk about the curveballs that have been thrown at us in the past 18 months, the support and guidance that is available, and how we are working in partnership. So next slide, please. Now, if you were with us 2 years ago, you would have seen half of this slide where I announced that Sarah Newton, who was the minister covering HSE, was leaving post, and Justin Tomlinson was taking up post. Well, no surprise that in 18 months it's been all changed, and we now have Mims Davis as the new Minister for Health, covering the Health and Safety Executive. So next slide, please. Also change at the top within HSE, the chair of the HSE board was Martin Temple, and some of you will remember Martin because he has spoke previously at Alliance events. Notably, I think his last one was when we had one in the Morpher Stadium, and gosh, that would have been 3 years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago now. I can see Anne nodding, so hopefully I've got that right. Martin left, and we were really pleased in HSE that Sarah Newton, who had been our minister, agreed and applied to become the chair. So Sarah already had a background in understanding health and safety and how we worked. And I can say that despite everything that's gone on, Sarah has been very hands-on, and I've actually had direct meetings with her a couple of times since she's joined. So she's really getting to grips with what's happening. Next slide, please. So when we last met, David Snowball had announced his retirement and was leaving HSE, and we now have a new Chief Executive Officer, who is Sarah Alban. And Sarah joined HSE in September 2019. She'd previously been the Chief Executive of the Insolvency Service, and before that had worked from the Ministry of Justice. For those who understand civil service grades, Sarah joined the civil service many years ago at Band 6, which is the lowest entry point, and has worked her way all the way up to the CEO position. So she's very knowledgeable and understanding about how ways of government work, and also how to interact with the other departments. So that's really good news for us in HSE. And she has been, and I'm not just saying this, I can truly say that as a Chief Executive Officer, she's been very supportive of all the staff in HSE as we've all worked through the COVID crisis. Next slide, please. Okay, so I can't remember exactly whether this was just coming in, probably when I last spoke, but we now, HSE is the official building safety regulator, not fully staffed by HSE staff, but by other building safety professionals. But Peter Baker, who particularly those of you who work in the construction industry will know, he used to be the Chief Inspector of Construction, is now the Chief Inspector of Buildings, leading the building safety regulator. Now, of course, the building safety regulator doesn't currently cover Wales. It is an England only regulator. But in January of this year, the Welsh Government published its building safety white paper. It's now closed for comment. And HSE is engaged fully with the Welsh Government to discuss further the approaches to regulating building control professions and implications, of course, for cross-border working, because we don't all just work in our little bubbles anymore. Welsh Government have also asked the MHCLG for changes to the Building Safety Act in 1984, and that's to allow the implementation of an appropriate regime for design and construction in the area of high-rise buildings, and to enable legislation to come out directly from the Senedd. Next slide, please. So for once, I'm glad to say there's a HSE slide with no change to staff. So depending on which areas you work in, some of these names will probably be familiar to you. So we have Neil Craig, who remains as head of the Chemicals, Explosives and Major Hazards Division. Mike Thomas, who is head of operations for construction for the whole of Wales, and myself for the Field and Operations Division. We also have a head of quarries, which is Colin Mew, and lots of specialists based in Wales as well. Next slide, please. So the principal inspectors, there has been a few changes. Paul Harvey, who some of you will know used to work in construction, is now working for ChemHD as the principal inspector. Kerry Bynan is the new principal inspector for construction, covering the whole of Wales. And then within my unit, the Field Operations Division, we have Chantal Nichols, covering South East Wales and Herefordshire. Joy Gunnin, covering South West Wales. And if you're thinking that's a new name, I will share with you, and Joy won't mind it. She used to be known as Joy Jones, but has reverted to her maiden name of Gunnin, not to cause any confusion that it's somebody new. And in North Wales, we currently have Emily Osborne as the principal inspector. If you noticed on the first slide, I also cover the Marches area of Shropshire, Staffordshire, and Lynn Spooner is my principal inspector there. Next slide, please. So HSE's mission. Hopefully this isn't new to anybody here. It remains as valid today as it's always been, to prevent work-related death, injury, and ill health. And why it doesn't change is quite obvious when you start looking at the statistics. The next slide, please. Now, I appreciate you might not be able to read this slide clearly, but all the slides I'm going to show you today, obviously this presentation is being recorded, and the statistics are available to download off the HSE website. Next slide, please. We also have the reality in Wales with statistics, and I just show you these with a warning, a caveat, because sometimes people think, oh, well, it's this many in Wales and that many in GB, therefore make a correlation. Well, you can't really do a straight correlation, because there's different industries and occupations within the different nations that do add a sort of factor to bare numbers. So whilst it gives you a principal idea of how Wales is doing, and I will go into it in a bit more detail, you just a health warning that you can't actually do it directly. Thank you. Next slide. So the fatalities. These are our current published statistics for 2019 to 2020. They are still provisional, but they will be finalised in July this year and will be available on our website. As you will see there, in this period, there were 111 GB work-related fatalities. This is actually a decrease of 38 from the previous year, but still, I'm sure you'd all agree, a number that is way too high. Now, Wales, despite what I was saying about comparisons, we had 16 worker fatalities in 2019 to 2020. On average, Wales usually has 12 workers killed every year. So actually, in terms of fatalities, unfortunately, Wales is double the GB rate per 100,000 workers. So that is a very sorry statistic. Members of the public, Great Britain 92, Wales 5. Sorry, that read out a bit like a football score, but you know, again, the figures are still not acceptable. Now, I don't know if anybody was aware of this, but this, in the bottom of the slide, that is actually a link to the page on the HSE website where we do update the fatalities every quarter. Not just numbers, but we actually give the names and details of the fatalities, the people who have actually died, rather than just base statistics. It also gives the location in terms of which geographical area they were in, so you can go in and have a look and see specifically the type of fatal incidents we have been having in Wales. Just as an aside, because too often people can become caught up in the statistics, with Workers' Memorial Day last year, myself and my team actually held a 2-minute silence and then did a roll call of all the deaths we have been involved in investigating over the past 12 months. And it makes you realise how important that mission is, and why we are here, and what we're doing is trying to get that list of names ever decreasing until one day we hit that 0 target. Next slide, please. In terms of industry, excuse me, my screen's gone a bit wobbly. In terms of industry, you will see the actual numbers. These are for GB, and construction had the highest number of actual fatal injuries to workers with 40 people. However, whilst construction saw an increase in the number of fatal workers in this year, and it is higher than the low of 31 workers who died in construction last year, the numbers are fluctuating, and as a 5-year average, it is 37. But still, agriculture, forestry and fishing still remains the worst industry, with a fatal injury rate 18 times as high as all industries average. Construction, as I said, was the highest in terms of numbers, is 4 times as high as the average rate across all injuries. Manufacturing and transport, they have a fatal injury rate around twice the average rate. Now, interestingly, mining and quarrying is actually around 4 times as high, very similar to construction, but have had no deaths to workers in the last 2 years. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the main kinds of fatal accidents for workers, it's nothing new. I have to say this every time. We talk about the way the world of work has changed and is moving on, but the kinds of fatal accident for workers remain the same. It's falls from height, accounting for 1/4 of all workers' deaths in this year. And it's been a similar proportion to the last 5 years combined. Being struck by a moving vehicle, this accounted for 20 fatal injuries to workers in 2019 and 2020, just under 20% of all the deaths that year. Again, it has changed very little as a proportion over the years. Other types of injuries, which is not listed on here, but do make up the different accident types, believe it or not, still include slips, trips or falls, exposure or contact with a harmful substance, explosions, injured by animals, or struck against something fixed or stationary. Now, we have had quite a high percentage of deaths caused by cattle in my unit and across GB in the past year. I don't know whether it's people are going walking more, because that's about all we've allowed to do, but we have seen a high increase in fatal and serious injuries to members of the public walking through fields that have cattle in. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about fatals, so let's talk about ill health at work. The figure there is very clear to see. 1.6 million workers across GB suffer from work-related ill health, and in Wales, that figure is 70,000. The three main causes of ill health are still stress, anxiety and depression, MSDs, and occupational lung disease. Now, I've mentioned occupational lung disease. That accounts for about 12,000 of 13,000 total annual deaths linked to past exposures at work. Because let's not forget, with ill health, it's not just immediate exposure. We are still dealing with all those legacy exposures. 174 new cases of occupational asthma were seen by chest physicians in 2019, with evidence of increasing rates of new cases over the years. And for this reason, HSE has just begun a targeted campaign inspecting metal fab premises to look specifically at the health risks from metalworking fluids and welding fume. Some of you will be aware that this programme of work has previously been done by HSE. We were impacted by the pandemic, but it's very much operational and up and running now. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so a couple of figures to throw at you here in terms of workplace injuries. So 693,000 workers sustained a non-fatal injury at work, according to the Labour Force survey. But only 65,427 were reported by employers under Riddor. We know there is considerable underreporting of Riddor. We also know that you may have had a slight injury at work. That's not to take that fact away, but it may not be reportable under Riddor. So it's still a lot of reporting. 31,000 workers said to the Labour Force survey they had been injured at work in Wales. And 6.3 million is the number of days that have been lost in GB as a direct result of non-fatal workplace injuries. And again, that is from the Labour Force survey. So the rate of self-reported non-fatal injuries is showing a general downward trend, but it has been flat for quite a number of years now. Next slide, please. Okay, and if we look at the reasons behind workplace injuries, again, nothing new. We've got slips, trips or falls on the same level, handling, lifting and carrying, struck by a moving object, acts of violence, which do tend to be the public professional services, such as in prison services, the police forces, but also sadly in healthcare environment as well, and then falls from height. Thank you. Next slide. Cost to GB, apart from, and these costs are calculated, not just financial costs, but also the human costs. So this is looking at workplace injury and new cases of work-related health. So you can see the costs are sort of divvied up 66% to ill health, understandably from the ongoing burden on the NHS, and 34% of injury. And that cost is costing employers 3.2 billion. It's costing the government 3.5 million. And it costs individuals 9.6 billion. So it's not, and these are 2018 prices. Next slide, please. In Wales, obviously, a lower amount, which you would expect, but it still costs 771 million. That is the cost of workplace injury and ill health to Wales. 463 million for ill health. That averages about 19,000 per individual ill health case, and 308 million equivalent to 1.74 million per fatal injury and 8,500 per non-fatal injury. So it is not cheap to have accidents at work, and I'm sure as fellow professionals you wouldn't disagree with that. So next slide, please. So the costs I've just mentioned don't include prosecution costs. So I was just going to update you on a few recent prosecutions we've had in Wales. This one was still ongoing when I spoke to you last. This was Celsa Steelworks in Cardiff, and those of you in South Wales in the area will probably remember that on the 18th of November 2015 there was an explosion and 2 men died. Eventually, Celsa pleaded guilty to a complete lack of risk assessment. And why I flag this one particularly, one, because it's horrible because it was a double fatality. But secondly, there is this misnomer out there when you go to companies that risk assessment, we've got a risk assessment for our production line, we've got a risk assessment for how we make this, we've got a risk assessment for how we do this. But non-routine maintenance tasks seem to think that they don't need a risk assessment. And in fact, they're even more dangerous than the routine stuff because you are trying out different things, fault finding. And this was the case here where a risk assessment had not been done. And if it had been, it would have identified the risk of an explosion from a flammable atmosphere. And as a result of their lack of systems, they've pleaded guilty and were fined £1.8 million. No comfort to the families, but they were both relieved that justice was done. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a recent prosecution in South West Wales. This is a recycling company. Now, I don't know if you can make out the 2 little men in the high-vis jackets at the bottom of the screen there, working in close proximity to a 360-degree excavator. Now, what you might not see, there's a bit of black blur at the bottom of the feet of one of the workers. If we could go to next slide, please. That'll be what you were seeing was a brush that had been engineered by the site, made up of different wire components that the 360 excavator would sweep across the ground to clear debris. Now, those of you who work in the waste and recycling industry will recognise that people do work on the ground amongst the machines, and it's called totting as they assist with moving material around. But the law is very clear. You need to segregate those pedestrians, those workers, excuse me, from the machinery, and this just didn't happen in this case. So if we go back a slide, please. So the blue arm of this excavator was wildly sweeping round with this homemade wire brush, which weighed half a ton, so it was no light feat. And guess what? It fell and landed directly on one of those workers who were working directly underneath it. They were prosecuted and received a hefty fine. The other complication with this, these workers were on site they were on site to see if they liked working there before the company decided whether they were going to take them on permanently. So the whole area of organisation was not the best, shall we say. Thank you. Next slide. 2 slides. Okay. I mentioned transport in the figures for fatalities and non-fatal injuries. Constantly, we are still investigating accidents where forklift trucks have injured workers because they're not being segregated on site. This is a company in South East Wales, and they were fined 520,000 for a worker who had to be put in an induced coma after the injuries they suffered from this incident. They have survived, but they have got now life-changing injuries. Next one, please. And quite often, you know, it's all been talk about construction and manufacturing and transport, but we're still having incidents in health and social care. And obviously in Wales, HSE, along with CIW and HIW, regulate this sector. But there are, you know, we don't have a CQC like there is in England, which totally look after the risks to residents and service users. In this case, a care home was fined after an 88-year-old woman repeatedly got her leg trapped in between the bed rail and the side of the bed. None of the staff in the home understood about the risks from bed rails. None of them had been trained. None of them understood about the compatibility between a bed and a bed rail. And none of them even thought that after she trapped her leg half a dozen times that there may be an issue. Now, this poor lady eventually landed up in hospital having her leg amputated because the amount of injuries that were caused by it being trapped. Sadly, she subsequently went on to also die. The guidance has been out there for years. It's still out there, and there is a link at the bottom. But it's very sad that the type of incidents we're seeing are the same ones that we've been seeing for years. Next slide, please. Curveballs. Well, we've all had a few of them this year, haven't we? So, and last year. So the first one for HSE, of course. This next slide, please. We left Brexit. When I spoke to you last, we were like, right, we're gearing up for Brexit, and here we are. We've left the EU, and this actually had a significant impact on HSE. If we can go to the next slide, please. I mean, if you just start with the chemicals industry, HSE was part of the whole European agency, which looked at REACH, looked at classification and putting chemicals safely onto the market. So we have now had to create a GB chemicals regulatory division that does everything that the European one did. Also, there's an issue with civil explosives, so we've had to put more work into that to ensure that explosives that go on the market in the UK are safe for use. And of course, major changes to the manufacture and supply of work equipment. But the one thing I'm really, really pleased that I can say to you today is that HSE was ready. On day one, all the legislation was in place, staff were in place, and there was a seamless transition from the EU to GB regulator. Next slide, please. And some of you, if you've not seen these yet, you will as they start coming onto the market. This, of course, is the new UK conformity assessment. So replacing the CE marking for the GB market. So instead of the CE marking, we now have the UKCA. There is a link in the presentation if you want more information on that. Next slide, please. So I think we all know what this is. And if not, you may have been sleeping for the last 2 years. But I mean, this is COVID. You know, this has hit everybody, every industry. every person in one shape or form. We keep saying it's been an unprecedented time, an unusual time, a once in a lifetime time, but we are still in the grips of the COVID pandemic. And if I can have the next slide, please. For HSE, this was a new thing, COVID's public health. What's it got to do with HSE? We deal with health and safety at work, as in health conditions that arise from the working situation. But the one thing I think COVID has taught us is the boundaries blur. There's no putting, you're not going to put up fences. We're in a national pandemic and the government says, you do this, you do that, you do this, and everybody does what they can to control and manage the exposure and the spread of COVID. So it is a public health matter, and it was predominantly regulated by environmental health officers and Public Health Wales. But HSE has been heavily involved. And on a personal level, the big difference is HSE is a GB regulator. COVID is a public health matter, which has devolved. So there were always different approaches going on. What was happening in England wasn't happening in Wales. What was happening in Scotland wasn't happening. So I became almost the single point of contact for HSE with the Welsh Government, combined with our own internal things to make sure that our websites were giving out the right advice. For those of you who work in UK-wide, GB-wide, even internationals, there is some educating to do to get people to understand the differences between the three nations and where the regulations fit. But equally, HSE had to ensure we were consistent and regulating across all three nations in the same manner, despite different pieces of legislation. But HSE only had remit to deal with health and safety at work, so the measures that were in workplaces to stop that spread of coronavirus. Now, you may have seen in the news, it was big headlines, HSE was given £14 million of the UK government. Personally, we would have liked that a lot sooner than this year, than last year, to recruit and maintain HSE's stand-in. This offer, as most of you will know, deal with funding. An offer is never always as good as it looks. This £14 million was ring-fenced. It had to be spent on dealing with COVID, full stop. Nothing else. So we haven't had any new fancy gadgets. We haven't had any, new PPE or anything like that. This is purely for dealing with COVID. And as we move on, I'll explain what HSE actually did for that. So if I go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a slide of HSE interactions with employers in Wales. From March 2020, when it all started, up to 7th of March 2021. I mean, these figures go out of date practically at some point in time. It was out of date by the hour. They are a little bit more stable now, but certainly things are not settling that quickly. So, for example, by the 7th of March, HSE have been involved in 83 outbreaks in Wales. That number is now up to 87. So we are still having COVID outbreaks in workplaces. It's not to say there are more outbreaks. These are just the ones that Public Health requested HSE presence to assist with the outbreak. Social distancing concerns on the 417. So these are the concerns that have been raised by employees directly to HSE, that their workplaces are not complying with social distancing legislation, they're not giving them enough room, they're not doing, they haven't changed working patterns, they haven't got proper disinfectant and cleaning regimes, and they are ones that inspectors follow up. Now, the next line is COVID spot checks, and this is where the £14 million has gone. HSE has set up a system and employs external contractors to undertake various checks on companies, both HSE enforced and local authority enforced across Wales. It's a 3-tier system, so it starts off with a phone call to ask relevant questions about their cleaning regimes, their risk assessments. Have they liaised with safety reps and trade unions to get the risk assessments in place? What are their welfare facilities like? And then it's weighted. And if they fail a particular question, it gets referred to the second stage, where a more detailed check is done by a HSE person. If that is failed, it then gets referred to HSE inspectors who will go out and inspect and discover what is actually going on the ground. Now, that's how it started. There's now an interim step where we have COVID spot checks officers, and they will turn up at companies to do these basic checks and inspections and report back to HSE. And if they have concerns, then they get referred to an inspector. Because as you can imagine, there's just no way the inspectors we have currently in Wales would be able to do 6,027 spot checks in a 12-month. So they are the interactions that HSE have been doing. Next slide, please. And these are the outcomes. Now, despite what you hear and read, 90% of those interventions in total, the outbreaks, the social distancing concerns and the spot checks, 90% of the time we went to visit sites, they were compliant, totally compliant. 6% needed a little bit of verbal advice. And in 1% of cases, there was enforcement action taken. So actually, our HSE's findings of employers trying to manage the risks from COVID is that everybody is trying. Everybody was trying to do their hardest. But as always, you will have a small pocket of employers who haven't got the hang of it or don't think it applies to them. But we were really pleased. And this information we did share with the Welsh Government throughout. It contributed to the 3-week reviews. Next slide, please. Okay, now these are the Riddor statistics that we have received from employers to say that their worker is believed to have COVID-19, which it was transmitted and they caught it in the workplace. Now, we've had all sorts of issues. These figures are as reported. So in reality, a lot of these, when we look into them, actually are not workplace related. A lot of the time when we've been involved in outbreaks, it's not the workplace itself. It's the people sharing lifts back and forth to work, going to the smoking shelters in their lunch breaks, or just generally congregating after work in their local communities. Wales does have the lowest level of reported fatals, but again, I must stress these are as reported as opposed to actually linked to workplaces. We have actually had 2 cases where we started following up to find out that the person who had been reported as dead was actually alive and well. So the simple tick of a wrong box while submitting your Riddor form can make a huge difference to statistics. Next slide, please. And you can probably see here, these are how the reports came in. These are all the Riddor reports I'm talking about now. Is a mix of reports made to HSE and reports made to local authorities. It is the total number of Riddors. And you can just see from this graph that there are actually, you can almost follow the curve of the COVID peaks and troughs as how they correlate with the reports. So when that time before Christmas and into the new year, when we went into the second major lockdown, there were more reports coming through then. But I must say it is extremely difficult without the right information to be able to say whether someone did contract it at work or didn't. And in a few cases, the only way we can say most definitely they did is because they didn't go anywhere else. They stayed at home. Their partners didn't go anywhere. And the only place they went was driving themselves to work and back home again. So whereas a lot of people, they work, especially if you've got agency workers who work in a number of different areas. So there's all sorts of complexities around working out whether or not these COVID reports are truly work-related. Next slide, please. HSE, both in Wales and GB-wide, have been putting out guidance on how to do your COVID-19 risk assessment. We're very grateful that the Welsh Government would refer everybody to our website as opposed to bringing in additional guidance. And I know in the past, and we'll put our hands up, HSE has not been as proactive with our Welsh publications, but I'm really pleased that a lot of the stuff we've done on COVID is out there bilingually, including the template of how to do your COVID-19 risk assessment. Next slide, please. Okay, partnership working. Next slide, please. HSE is really proud that we have very strong connections with the Working Well Together teams, and that recently the South Wales group has put out some short mental health videos for Mental Health Week. You know, we appreciate with all the partnerships that I'm going to mention now, they have been extremely dominated by COVID, the ability to meet, the ability to deliver what everybody would like to do. But it's great to see that there's still things going on, like this event today, that we can all get together as that safety community. Next slide, please. Okay, and as I've mentioned, HSE had very strong links with the Welsh Government during this COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. So some of the areas where, just to give you an idea of how HSE interacts with the Welsh Government, the Welsh Government under the Fair Work agenda set up a Welsh Government Health and Safety Forum. It's made up of representatives from the CBI, ACAS, the trade unions, myself representing HSE as the regulator, also directors of public protection representing the local authority regulators, and we were meeting on a monthly basis. Now, this idea was conceived pre-COVID, but as you can imagine with this and many other, if not every group, COVID has become the dominating factor in dealing with that as opposed to general health and safety matters. We've yet to meet again since the Senedd elections, so it will be interesting to see how that is taken forward. HSE also sits on the Health Protection Advisory Group, HPAG. This deals with all health protection matters in Wales. So whilst it has been dominated with COVID, it also looks at things if we have Legionella outbreaks or any other type of outbreak that can occur in the public health setting. I mentioned the Fair Work agenda. They've got a very specific work stream looking at social care workers and what can be done to improve the care and work of people in that industry. We also have the Wales Health at Work Partnership, WHWP, and this is a collaboration group which HSE sits on, looking at ill health in the general population, but also ill health at work and how that can be joined up messaging. And in fact, I keep saying last year because I forget we've completely lost a year, haven't we? So back in 2019, this partnership actually held a very successful health summit up in Llandudno. Some of you may have been able to attend, sharing different practices about improving health at work, and it was very well received. We work very closely, as I said, with Care Inspectorate Wales in terms of regulation of health and social and residential care. And we liaise closely with Healthcare Inspectorate Wales, who have a role inspecting the NHS and private healthcare. Next slide, please. Okay, so after that gallop, my challenge to you all is about coming together and being one voice for Wales. The alliance has been really, South Wales Alliance has been sustained for a number of years. One of the reasons I put this to you is it's time to look across the wider piece and what can you do as one united group, is the fact that I keep saying at the Welsh Health and Safety Forum that there needs to be a representative from safety professionals. And at the moment, we can't point to a single group that can put hand on heart and represent the interests of everybody. So I'm throwing the challenge open to everybody on this call today. And I do believe some of you had a meeting earlier this week to tentatively look at this. But we would certainly encourage you to see how you can work closely together and in collaboration with not only ourselves, but Welsh Government and the other partners I've talked about. And on that note, I am going to pause.
Thank you, Sean. I think that was a really interesting. 6.3 million days lost. That's an incredible amount, isn't it? And the cost is 771 million. I mean, just astronomical. And what was it, you said 14 million given to you additional funds just for COVID?
Yeah.
And yet we lose 771 million through ill health. Amazing. So we'll go to any questions. Anne, I will understand you're going to host the question session for us. So if you want to unmute and ask the questions.
There's nothing quite like somebody saying unmute. We had a question to start with before the meeting. And it's from Richard Rolfe from Cardiff University. I don't know if Richard wants to ask his question, or shall I launch into it? Basically, he wants to know, post-pandemic, what control does an employer have over employees' workstation when the employee chooses to work at home? That is, chooses to work at home with the employer's blessing. Do you have to provide a workstation? How do you work that one?
Okay, so obviously a lot of people have been working from home during the pandemic, myself included, hence the panic when my Wi-Fi my whole internet went down this morning. So if you've got somebody who has specialized DSE needs, so for example, they need to use a particular mouse or keyboard, then you, as an employer, you should be allowing them to take that home so they can use that at home. But a lot of difficulty will be is if you're temporary working at home, it's even if you were permanently based somewhere, you might have worked occasionally at home, which is very different to pretty much working full-time at home. So if you are agreeing that somebody is going to be permanently working from home or for a large time working at home, then you should be doing full workstation assessment and providing the appropriate equipment for those people to work at home. So that is the simple answer. Yes, if they are under your control and they are a worker working at home, then you need to provide the proper equipment so that they don't suffer from being in awkward postures, you know, that also that they're getting up and moving regularly and they're breaking up the DSE work. Because I'm sure everybody at one point on this call, if you have been working at home, it's very easy to get sucked in, forget what, not see where the hours go and suddenly find yourself very stiff and sore. So yeah, so that's the simple answer. And yes, there needs to be a workstation assessment. And if it's going to be permanent, then equipment needs to be provided. And
does that workstation assessment have to be done in person? Do you have to go into the person's home to do it? Or can
no, there's lots of ways you can do it these days with the use of technology and talking to someone, looking at what sort of chair they have, what sort of desk they have. So no, it can be done remotely.
We've got a couple of questions about statistics. Are the COVID statistics affected by underreporting? And how confident are you that all COVID work-related deaths have been identified and investigated? And then another question, is there a strategy in place to encourage more reporting so the statistics give a clearer picture?
Okay, COVID reporting, that is a very difficult one to answer for the simple reason we have had high numbers in where we would actually say they were not reportable in the first place because they haven't, on the balance of probability, can say that they got them at work. A lot of employers err on the side of caution and have reported them, and we do welcome that. But due to the numbers involved, we cannot review every single one to make that assessment. We look at every single Riddor that comes in, and we certainly investigate every fatal Riddor that is COVID Riddor that is reported to us, again, to determine whether it is work-related. So it's very subjective to a certain extent because it's have we done everything? What is this person doing outside of work? So accuracy, no, and I think this is where it comes with the health warning that these are as reported, and we would not say they were accurate figures of that they are actually work-related COVID cases. In terms of underreporting in general terms, HSE is currently looking at the Riddor website and how information is collected, and we are reviewing constantly the form and how we can increase accurate and more regular Riddor reporting. Obviously, we're reliant on good interactions from safety representatives and trade unions that they will inform us about something if the employer hasn't. But it is an age-old problem. All I can say is HSE is looking at it to see how best we can improve that reporting system.
Oh, we've got another one. Has Legionella been an issue?
We have been notified of a couple of Legionella cases because the one thing to remember is a lot of premises have been closed during the pandemic. And if they haven't properly flushed through the systems or been maintaining them, there is that risk of Legionella as things open up. Not high numbers, because certainly from HSE's perspective, manufacturing and the majority of industries that we regulate have been open throughout the pandemic. So it's not so much of an issue, but yeah, we have seen the odd cases crop up that working with public health to see if they can be identified as where a source could be.
People are asking about DSEs at home, and does the employer have to provide a desk, a chair, and the computer?
Yes, there's a simple answer if they are permanent home workers. I can forward a link because HSE has highlighted the information we've got about workstation checklists and working at home with DSE. So I can make sure that link is sent through after this presentation.
That would be very useful. And we have a question about bilingual. Some posters have been made bilingual, but many have not. This is a matter that we continue to pursue here in Wales and should be addressed through the business plan we are developing to improve Welsh language provision in our communications and dealings in Wales. That's from that's Matthew in reply to Dave Reed's query.
Matthew, otherwise I will bring Matthew in because Matthew is my Welsh language coordinator for Wales.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, we're aware that there are still posters that have not been translated and provided bilingually. Some have been done, but you're right, TSO, is it the stationery office, are responsible for some of them. But it's something that's ongoing, and part of our work at the moment is improving our provision on the Welsh language in Wales. And so hopefully that's another area that will be improved. But I'm going to take your note of your question. And again, you know, if it's something you want to email us about separately, then do so, because the more questions we get asked about that, it helps our cause really to improve the situation.
Is there a link between the need to reduce on-site inspections and the rise in fatalities?
I think if we knew what caused the rise in fatalities, we would be onto a winner, but unfortunately not. I mean, HSE has continued to inspect during the pandemic. We've gone out to investigate incidents. Same as everybody else, in the initial stages, we got our risk assessment sorted, we got our control measures in place, but we are at work, and therefore, despite some objections from some companies that we shouldn't be allowed in, we have overridden those and continued with our work on sites, both from a COVID perspective and general health and safety perspective.
Looking at plans and priority areas for the HSE in Wales, are you concerned that COVID will have had an effect on implementing them? Do they need resetting?
Another good question. COVID has changed the way people have had to operate in workplaces. So, for example, one of our areas of concern was because workplaces will be reducing numbers of staff to allow social distancing, that could in itself increase risks, which is why we have targeted inspections in the food industry over the last couple of months to make sure that manual handling and MSD issues were being properly controlled, so that COVID hadn't impacted on that. Other areas that COVID could have impacted, our chemicals division have been working closely with large chemical plants to ensure that you know, the critical infrastructure is still in place, because if you had a COVID outbreak, there was nobody left to push the right button, we could have a national disaster on our hands. So COVID has affected workplaces, but in different ways, but we have been building that in to our inspections and interactions with companies and employers.
Thanks. Trade unions have not been involved in strategic decisions in the COVID pandemic. Will the HSE support a move to strengthen trade union involvement in workplace strategy?
Okay. I mean, HSE is totally supportive of worker engagement and TU involvement in the workplace. One of the things we've actually done as part of our own internal checks is that every time a HSE inspector went to site to deal with COVID or something else, they would be expected to talk to the trade union representative or the safety rep, and these have all been audited so that we can say hand on heart that when HSE has visited a site during the COVID pandemic, that they have engaged with the workforce. I mentioned in my presentation the Welsh Government's Health and Safety at Work Forum. That is heavily represented by trade unions, including the TUC as well as GMB, Unison, Unite, and all the different representatives. And that meetings were, they are chaired by the minister. The First Minister actually chaired the first meeting, and the trade unions have been actively involved in advising that forum and the ministers on the COVID pandemic at that level.
Thanks. And now another one relating to courts. From a legal perspective, COVID seems to have brought the court system to a halt, especially in relation to HSE prosecutions. Do you have any information about how many prosecutions for health and safety breaches have been pursued in Wales over the last year?
Give me a second. I might have that information to hand. Yes. In 2019-20, which our figures are, verdicts were reaching 19 prosecution cases that HSE took in Wales with a conviction rate of 89%. We have been halted because of the COVID endemic, because a lot of the court premises were not suitable to be set up to be COVID secure. If some of you have been in there, you will know that a lot of the buildings are very, very old and very small and without the best of ventilation. HSE has not changed our enforcement policy, our enforcement criteria. It is just unfortunate that some have been caught up in the court system, and we have seen lengthy delays in getting them to court, but they are still progressing. We still have a high number of prosecutions progressing through the courts. And in fact, two of the cases I mentioned earlier, or three of the cases I mentioned earlier, have all been heard in the court system during the pandemic. So they are trickling through, not as quick as we like, because we are very conscious of the impact on not only the injured person or the bereaved person's families, but the fact that you know, it's not good for employers and duty holders either to have these things dragged out. Obviously, another impact on our prosecutions, similar to court delays, has been the delays in inquest proceeding with our fatal cases for exactly the same reasons. But the courts do seem now to be pushing things through and trying to keep clear the backlog, which is really good news.
I think we're just about finished on the questions. IOSH wants to remind people that there's a lot of recorded COVID webinars on the IOSH website. Go to events and you'll find them there. But I think that's just about it, Sian. Thank you very much. Over to Key.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you very much, Sian. That's very, very good. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed it. What we'd like to do now is, obviously this is an Alliance group meeting that IOSH are hosting. So what I'd like to do is give 2 minutes to each of the groups just to give an update on where they are. So if I can start with Claire Williams for the South and West Wales Safety Group. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, I have sad news. Since the last time we all gathered 2 years ago, we have had the passing of 2 vice presidents in the South and West Wales Safety Group. Bernard Mallows passed away in 2020, and more recently, Derek Winkley has also passed away. For those who have met either, you'll know their passion and commitment to protecting people's safety and health. The group website is hosting an obituary for Bernard currently, and Derek's will be uploaded shortly if anybody wishes to read more about their personal commitment to our profession. We've recently had an AGM, myself that is talking to you, and we also have 2 new vice chairs, Kay Barnes and Scott McKinnon, and Phil Jones, who I'm sure you'll all be aware of a previous chair, has moved to a vice president role, and he will continue working with Safety Groups UK on the management committee. Our membership continues to grow. We've over 122 members across a wide geographical spread and diverse industry base. And the group was awarded the Alan Bettler Award for the Best Safety Group UK 2019 in January 2020, and that was collected by Phil and Kay Barnes in London. As like any other of the groups, the last in-person event that we held was in February 2020. Since then, we've been operating a virtual network opportunity, utilising members, partners and associate platforms. Since February 2021, we've our own Microsoft Teams platform, thanks to colleagues in Safety Groups UK. And some of our standout events for our recent programme was the HSE hand-arm vibration, health risks and enforcement by a HSE specialist, Paul Delderfield. And I think one of our main highlights of our programme is presentations from our own Shield winners on their award applications, albeit we didn't have a dinner dance this year, along with everybody else. It's an excellent forum to collect good practice and reflect on improvement opportunities from within our own membership. Our programme continues through until March 2022 in the virtual world, where we do hope that we will be able to provide an in-person event at that time, but obviously we will monitor the situation. In our programme, we have a range of things, including Meet the Committee. We have mental health first aid courses, talks on gender bias of PPE, and how to embed a coaching culture within your organisation, and training in a remote world. So all interesting topics for us. And our event information will be available on the group website, which I will post into the chat for anybody that is interested. And that is the South and West Wales Safety Group update. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much, Claire. So Cardiff Safety Group next. I believe, Camilla, you're representing that today.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Kelvin, he's sent his apologies, the chair of the group. He couldn't make it today. I'm the secretary of the group. And I must admit, we have had, due to COVID, we had to cancel a lot of our events because we didn't get up and running for virtual kind of format instead. But our aim is now to kind of get back up and running in some form from like September and onwards, either in virtual format or in person. It all depends what the guidance will tell us we can do in the near future, really. So I think that's the only thing I got to say about Cardiff Safety Group. Anne, has he given anything else to you to say?
No, nothing else.
Thank you very much.
Camilla, it's you again. South Wales Construction Safety Group.
Yeah, yeah, again, I'm Camilla Bollington. I'm the chair of the South Wales Construction Safety Group. And again, we've had a bit of a quiet year because of COVID, and we haven't really run in a virtual format. However, we are now ramping back up again, and we got a couple of events planned for the near future. The one we got that we're really excited about is one in July, the 13th of July at 4 o'clock, with Kevin Benningson, who got experience in lifting operation for 20 years. And he's going to give an overview of the LOLA regs and give some prosecution examples. And if you are interested in joining this event, you can register on our website, which is constructionsafetygroup.org. And it's open both for members and non-members. And the next event after that is September, 14th of September. The same, we always meet on the second Tuesday of the month at 4 o'clock, except for in August and December. And that one, we're hoping to have about fire safety, but a specific topic is still to be confirmed. So just keep looking at our website, and you can see, you will see an update on that one. And I think that's all I got from the South Wales Construction Safety Group. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Camilla. So the Welsh branch of the IRSM. So Steve Burgess.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, straight off the press, I had a meeting with IRSM head office yesterday for an update of what's happening with the branch going forward. Obviously, with the last 12 months with COVID, we've had to cancel a lot of meetings, and we haven't done a lot, to be honest, in the last sort of year and a half. But we're rebranding and refreshing, the branch for the coming year. IRSM are liaising with a lot of students and offering free student membership to the IRSM, also free coaching and mentoring workshops for students to develop in the health and safety field. So they're liaising with a lot of the universities in Wales to focus on bringing some students and some fresh blood, should we say, into the profession, which is really positive. They've got a new learning platform that can be accessed on the internet site for students to access. Also for existing members for the branch, they're going to create WhatsApp groups to make it more easier for people to communicate within the group, because we had issues with that in the past. Very keen on collaboration with the South Wales Group Alliance. Hopefully we can get the conferences back up and running, which I'm sure Anne will touch on later on shortly, which will be a massive success. And we're looking at the moment, we're South Wales branch of IRSM, and we're looking at creating an All Wales branch of IRSM, which will be a bit more collaboration with the north of Wales as well. So that'll be a really positive thing. And there'll be dates for the next coming year being agreed as we speak, and they'll be on the IRSM branch web pages, and also they will be contacting all the members directly with some of the exciting opportunities and collaboration opportunities and guest speakers and branch information moving forward on that then. So watch this space really. So we haven't done a lot in the last year, but quite positive for the next 12 months for collaboration and refreshing the branch locally as well. That's it for me, I think. Oh, there's a new branch handbook as well that's being added to the website. That's just being finalised at the moment, and that'll be available and be sent out to the members shortly as well.
Thank you, Steve.
That's it from me.
Thank you. So the Occupational Nurses Group, Lorraine Jenkins.
Hi, yes, thank you. We're not such an active group as the others, mainly focusing on our annual conference, which unfortunately we had to cancel last year and cancel this year. However, we do have one planned and scheduled for March next year, and we're working on that. And the venue is at Cardiff City Stadium, where we've been before, and we're familiar with the facilities there, which are acceptable. So our members have been accessing online courses and training particular to their specialism through other providers and other educational facilities. So our main focus now is on the conference for next year. So I'll send out some more information when we've got our program. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. Anne, did you want to give an update on the South Wales Safety Group Alliance before we move to the IOSH groups?
Sadly, the Alliance, although we've got very active members, we had to cancel last year's conference and we've had to cancel this year's conference. And we have not had the confidence to book a conference for next year. We're waiting to see if people are happy and to meet face to face before we organise anything. But it's hopefully it'll be in April next year in the Cardiff City Stadium. We are talking with other safety related groups with a view to getting a bigger voice for Wales health and safety, with hoping to be able to talk to Welsh Assembly government and get more involved. We are looking at the Scottish system at the moment and trying to emulate that, but it's the first steps at the moment. So watch this space.
Thanks, Anne. Right, over to Seamus, West Wales. If you'd like to give us an update, Seamus.
Good timing, Keith. I was just about to send you a message. I got a meeting I got to go to. I should be very quick. Thank you for your invite this afternoon. Really good afternoon, as normal. Taking a lot of stuff on, and it's always good. West Wales, a lot of changes down this way. Big changes for us. It's been great to have a lot of speakers actually come to speak to us from wider spectrum, rather than having to look at the mileage, how far we are away from everybody, and go, ooh, do I really want to go and talk down there? Which has been always a difficult thing for West Wales in the past. So, although COVID has caused us a few problems, for West Wales, it's been an upside, because, we've been a bit much more progressive and get more people involved, not just from the local area, from, the rest of the UK and overseas. So it's been quite a good year for us, actually. And we're looking forward to the same this year with regard to what we got planned. We've got a few new members on the committee. We've got our AGM tonight to ratify things we've done. And then it's sailing forward, as I would say, sailing down to Milford Haven and building. And as Anne's just said, you know, I've been involved in these discussions this week, and we all want to build on this because one voice is a lot better than 10, because we're all going through the same funnel, and it actually gets you much further forward. So say, I got to go to another meeting now. Thank you for the meeting this afternoon. It's been excellent, and we'll catch up later.
Thank you, Seamus. Richard, North Wales branch, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you, Sean. Thank you, Keith, for running this for us. Really, North Wales, we're the only safety group in North Wales at the present moment. We have 458 members. We converted to virtual meetings almost from May last year. We've had 2,644 registrations, and we've actually had 792 people come to our meetings. Our biggest meeting was on fire risk assessment with North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, where we got 1,500 people signed up, and we only had 300 people on the platform. So 300 people turned up for the meeting, which was really good. We've had lots of talks on accident investigation from Kelvin Topset. We've had occupational health from the specialist nurses in Glenclwyd, and also we've had a lot of working with our members to get them through their charter status, which is really important. It has been good working with Tudor, Seamus, Paul, looking at how we can bring Wales together. But now with Anne taking the reins, we're looking forward to be a good voice within Wales. And I mean, we just want to be proactive, and we want to save that life, which is what we all want to do. And to Sean, I'd say I remember meeting Steve Capel many, many years ago, about 30 years ago, which shows how old I am. But thank you for the work the HSE do, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Richard.
Pleasure.
So for the South Wales branch, we had our AGM a couple of weeks ago. Tudor stepped down after his 2 years in charge, and I was duly elected. So I am the new chair, if people didn't already guess. So you've got to put up with me for the next 2 years, and hopefully we can make it and grow on all the success and the structure and everything else that Tudor's helped put in place to keep it going. Our next branch event is in June, and that's on the IOSH website, and people can register there, as are all the IOSH branch meetings. And I believe Paul's just put the link into the chat. So if you go there, you can find all our meetings for the IOSH branches. Okay. I think that is everything. Unless you've got anything else, Sean, you want to add before we end?
Yeah, I just say thank you for inviting me to come along and represent HSE today. And yes, I know Steve Capel, and actually it's quite interesting. There's a few ex-HSE faces on the screen. It's nice to see Terry Rose, Steve Pierce, and Scott McKinnon. And apologies if I've missed anyone, but there's far too many screens to see who's on here. And yeah, I've been with HSE 30 years as well. Richard, it's not that long, really.
No, I know it isn't.
So no, that's all. Thank you, Keith and Anne.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. We'll leave the chat open for a minute if anybody wants to put any other messages, and see you all again in the future. Take care and stay safe.